Welcome, everyone, to the VBC Bible Institute, and welcome back to our course, Journey Through the Bible. Yes, we are taking a journey through the entire Bible, and you're probably starting to think, no, we're not. We're taking a journey through Genesis chapter 1, because at this rate, we're all going to be dead before you finish Genesis chapter 1. Well, you may be right there. You may be right. And this is going to be the danger of trying to take a journey through the entire Bible is trying to determine what to cover and what not to cover. However, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to defend myself because I've already received a couple of emails going, you're never going to finish Genesis chapter 1. I understand that, but let me try to offer a defense. Let me try to offer an explanation. And this is very important. Genesis chapter 1 really sets the table. It really deals with so many issues that are going to be issues you're going to have to deal with for the rest of the Bible. It sets up, how are you going to interpret things, right? We've talked about the word day, right? How do we interpret the word day? Well, if we can't figure out how to interpret the word day, I mean, just look at it. Genesis chapter 1. Let's just look at this. Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the water and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. All right, you're 5 verses into the first chapter of the Bible, 5 verses into the first chapter of the Bible, and immediately, listen, if you can't figure out how to interpret the word day, if we cannot figure out what that means, how do we interpret it? What do you hope to accomplish by taking a journey through the rest of the Bible other than spending a lot of time walking, a lot of time hiking through 66 books to get to the end going, I don't know what any of it means because I could never even figure out how to interpret it because no one can figure out how to interpret the word day, right? So like that, we've got to spend time figuring that kind of thing out. And I've given you time. Some of you have sent photographs of your work on looking up the word day as it's used all throughout the book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And it seems to be a consensus amongst everyone that, look, yeah, the normal usage is what you find in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And I will argue if that's the normal usage, that's, there's only a few where they thought, okay, maybe the majority of times it's used that way, then you've got to come up with something better than, well, evolutionary theory argues that everything has to be older, so there's no way that word day can mean what it appears to mean. No, you can't do that. You've got to go with how the word is typically used. So, but that starts getting you prepared to deal with interpretive challenges, dealing with hermeneutics, how to figure out the meaning of something. So I know we want to get through Genesis at some point, but if we don't accomplish these things, then I'm wasting your time, I'm wasting my time, and we're not really accomplishing what we're setting out to accomplish in this Bible Institute, which is to truly educate you in the Bible, to truly train you, to equip you so that you can teach, that you can deal with these issues. And so sometimes dealing with a text is about more than simply learning what that text says. It's sometimes about learning a skill and how to deal with future problems and future hermeneutical and interpretive challenges. And if we're in Genesis, then we need to get those skills down now before we reach other books that are that's going to prove to be extremely difficult. All right, I hope that makes sense, and hopefully you're appreciative. Hopefully you are. I don't know. And so we just think about it. And also another thing just to consider. Not only is the word day, and we talked about the word day, another important thing to remember, we also spent a considerable amount of time dealing with an interpretive issue where someone wants to place an entire theory in between verse 1 and verse 2, known as the gap theory, right? That the argument in that theory, just to remind you, is that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the original creation. Then between verse 1 and verse 2, some cataclysmic judgment happened upon everything, where things were destroyed, things died. And then in verse 2, and the earth, and this is the way they say you should translate verse 2, and the earth became without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And then starting in verse 3, you have the recreation of everything. All right. Now, please note, now you're dealing with an argument where someone places an entire theory in the space between verse 1 and verse 2. Now, if that's already happening in Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, right? Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. If that's already happening where someone is placing a theory between two verses and there's actually no words there, can you imagine what we're going to face as we go through the rest of the Bible? You've got to just prepare yourself. And remember, I told you, it's discouraging. I mean, you should be discouraged. It's discouraging that Christians have that many problems and we're not even 5 verses into a chapter and we're talking the first chapter of the entire Bible? Yes, Christians have that many problems. Is it discouraging? Yes. Is it frustrating? Yes. But what should you not allow that frustration and discouragement lead to? It should not lead to you being discouraged or frustrated with the Bible. Those problems are our problems. We have to own those problems. We're human beings. We have pride. We have ego. We have arrogance. We think we have it all figured out. We have our own ideas. We have our own theories. And so much of the time we place ourselves in the text and we bring our ideas and our theories with it and we think we're always right. We get frustrated with people. Do not get frustrated with the Bible. All right. So that's why we're spending so much time. And I really do hope you appreciate that. Okay. I hope you do. So here's how we're going to begin. All right, there's my defense, okay? First, I have to defend myself. Now, are you ready? We got a lot to do, class. We have a lot to do, so let's jump in. First, you should already know what we're going to do. We're going to listen to Genesis chapter 1 be read. All right, we're going to listen to it. Listen carefully. Pay attention. I am not playing this for just because I want to fill up, some time. I don't need, trust me, I don't need to take up time playing something else. I can talk for multiple hours without anyone else's help, all right? I am playing this for your benefit. I want you to hear I want you to hear Genesis chapter 1 read over and over and over and over. So when we move on to 2, you know what was in chapter 1, all right? Here we go. Let's listen carefully.
The first book of Moses, called Genesis, chapter 1. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, Let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful, and multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day.
There is Genesis chapter 1. You cannot read it enough. You cannot listen to it enough, because, everybody should remember this, class, the quality of your interpretation is dependent upon the quantity of your reading. The quantity of your reading is essential if you want a quality interpretation. You have to read, and you have to observe. The quality of your interpretation is dependent upon the quality of your observation. Poor observation leads to poor interpretation. All right, very low quantity of reading is going to lead to a poor interpretation. It's just, that's the way it works. That's the law that is basically in place, and you have to remember that. All right. So, what do we want to do here? I want to try to kind of put everything back together. And then we're going to advance to a very key, probably the last major issue that we're focused on in chapter 1. I know there's a lot of ground that we could cover, and I'm going to have to skip a lot, and it hurts me and it pains me to do so. But if I had email with questions, look, your emails will determine what I skip and what I cover. And if I don't get an email from you, then you have to suffer through what I think you need to listen to. Okay, so you have some power, but you have to speak up. All right, here we go. First, I want you to write down two words. I want you to write down the word divine, and I want you to write down the word supernatural. I want you to write down the word divine, and I want you to write down the word supernatural. First thing I want you to remember is that Genesis chapter 1 is the story of creation. It's telling us that how God created everything. And I want you to just remember this, that all of creation has a divine origin. All of creation has a divine origin. All right. That means the origin of everything is found in the divine. It's found in God. God is the origin of everything. Everything finds its beginning in God. Now, this is essential because that means we have to have a God-centric view of life. We have to understand a God-centric view of purpose, a God-centric view of meaning, a God-centric view. He's the one all origin is found in God. That's where it's found. So we cannot look for purpose. We cannot look for meaning. We cannot look for satisfaction in the material. We cannot look to matter. We cannot look to the material universe to find purpose, to find meaning, to find contentment, to find satisfaction, to find happiness. We have to find it in the divine. We have to find it in God because he is the origin of everything is traced back to God. It was created by him. It was created for him. I cannot stress that enough. A divine origin. All right. So we've stressed that, and I'm going to continue to stress that. Divine origin. Everything has a divine origin. All of creation has a divine origin. It did not arise. It wasn't matter. It wasn't matter didn't blow up. It wasn't just some random accident. That means it's created for a purpose. Where is that purpose found? In the divine. Everything. Its meaning, its purpose, everything. We have to look to God. All right. I can state that 100 different ways. But hopefully you have that down. That has practical implications for your life. If you want true happiness, true contentment, true purpose, true meaning, look to the divine because everything has a divine origin. It came from God. God created everything. Second, the word supernatural. Not only is creation of a divine origin, listen, it is of a supernatural origin. Now, obviously, the fact that it's a divine origin should tell you it's a supernatural origin. So why am I giving a word that sounds like I'm being redundant? I'm being redundant on purpose. It's divine because I want you to just realize we no matter when we go all the way back, there's God. In the beginning, God. God is there. So we have to start Genesis with a God-centric view, and that should take us through the rest of the Bible and the rest of our lives, all right? But supernatural origin is very critical, and here's the reason why. When you start reading Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, all right, you're going to read things like this. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God just speaks light into existence. That's supernatural. That's supernatural, right? And then he goes and creates everything. Everything he creates, it's done supernaturally. Now, why is this important? Because here's what happens. We find things in Genesis chapter 1. We find things in Genesis chapter 2, and we get confused by it. We're like, well, wait a minute. Well, if that was the light, well, when did the sun get made? So what was this light? And we start trying to figure out what was this light versus, and wait, when the sun was here, and wait, he created this, and wait, so everything came from a kind, and we start trying to ask all of these questions, trying to understand things. Remember, creation was done supernaturally. So trying to find non-supernatural, trying to explain creation, trying to find answers through a scientific, materialistic explanation, like we want some kind of physical explanation to explain what was that light. Wait, how did this happen? Wait, he created this? Wait, that doesn't make sense. Wait, that doesn't. You're trying to find physical explanations to a supernatural event. You can't do that. It was supernaturally created. End of story. Just stop right there. That means our physical understanding can't get us to the supernatural reality. The supernatural reality, God spoke things into existence. He did this, he did that. And from a material, physical perspective, it may not make any sense. And you can have a team of quote-unquote creation scientists trying to explain it, but they still typically try to explain it with some kind of physical explanation. Well, you see, some scientists say this, but other scientists say this. You can have that debate forever. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's a supernatural origin. It was done supernaturally. God spoke things into existence. Okay, well, when he spoke them into existence, did he speak them into existence with the appearance of age? Well, then dating anything is irrelevant at that point because everything that originally was created already had an appearance of age. So how do you see what I'm going with? I'm trying to show you that it's supernatural origin. So all of our attempts to try to explain it using, materialistic or physical explanations don't work. And whenever God steps in a supernatural way, you can't explain it. When you get to Exodus and God's bringing all these plagues down, there have been Bible scholars who try to give some kind of physical explanation. It was a supernatural event. We can't explain supernatural events because they go beyond what is natural. They go beyond what is natural because they are supernatural. A divine origin, a supernatural origin. Please remember that. Okay, next. So those are two words I want you to realize about creation. Divine origin, supernatural origin. Second, I want you to write down two key words. Two key words that come directly from the text. And we all know what the first key word is. The first key word is God. The first key word is God. Make sure you have that down. The second key word is good. God creates. God does all the things that we talked about in Genesis chapter 1. So the chapter is about God. Make sure you realize that. The chapter is about God, and it's about God's actions to create everything. The chapter is about God. If you turn it into trying to figure out creation, and wait, how did he make this? And wait, he made it that way, and wait, that doesn't make any sense. You're missing the point of the chapter. It's about God. You should see God's power. You should see God's wisdom. You should see God, and you should be glorifying God. God should receive the glory of Genesis chapter 1, not men arguing about the chapter. Sometimes we want to steal the glory for ourselves. It's about God, right? So get that. Second, the word good. God created, and everything was good. God gave a judgment on everything, and he judged it as being good. Keep that in mind. The two key words, God and good. Those are the two key words. So two important things to remember about creation: divine origin, supernatural origin. Two key words, God and good. And again, that's why we spend all of that time working through the chapter, looking at every place where God is mentioned and then writing down what he did, because you need to realize that's what the chapter is about. But now we move to the very important section. All right, here we go. Let's go to verse 26. Yeah, we're going to go 26 to 31. 26 to 31. All right, and this is the section that I cannot stress to you the importance of this section. In fact, I don't even feel, the more I think about this, I don't feel adequate in even trying to deal with this section. I don't, because I don't know if I can convince you of the significance of the section that we are about to read. I don't know if I can convince you. I don't know what I could do. Because on one hand, if you've been a Christian for any length of time and you've been a student of the Bible, you're so familiar with this that it almost breeds contempt. Familiarity breeds contempt. And if you're not familiar with it, you'll get so caught up into, well, wait a minute, that goes against what evolution says, and you're going to sit there and try to figure out how to maybe reconcile this with try to create theistic evolution and make it all work. And both sides, the one who just, I know it and almost have a contempt for it, that's horrible. The other one who just wants to turn it into a big argument about evolution, that's horrible, because both sides are missing it. This is the most significant section, maybe of the entire Bible, especially if you want to understand yourself and understand the world around you. Right? This is critical. All right, so let's take this apart. You ready? Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, there we go, something else that God did here. He said, hopefully you had that down when you did the work on the chapter. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Now let's stop right here. We have God speaking of a plurality. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So he's getting ready to make man. He's getting ready to make humans, and he's going to make them in his likeness. But it's our likeness, a plurality. Now, who is this plurality? Where does it come from? Now, we're being exposed to this right early on in Genesis. Now, look, There is no way to get around this. This plurality has to be referring to God because we are created in the image of God. You cannot say, well, this is God and the angels. Whoa, slow down. Are we created in the image of angels? No, we're created in the image of God. So this plurality has to be speaking of the Godhead. And this is where we have one God, three distinct persons, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. All right. Now, we've already seen a hint in Genesis 1, verse 2 of the Spirit. Now, some doesn't translate it that way, but the King James, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So we may be getting a kind of an indication of the Spirit moving there. We know if we go to the Gospel of John, chapter 1, and Colossians, Jesus is credited with creation. And now we have God here speaking of us. So it seems to imply that this would be God the Father, Jesus, who is spoken of being involved in creation, and the Holy Spirit. Three persons, one God, the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, we can't turn into this to a theological discussion about the doctrine of the Trinity, but clearly that's what this has to be referring to. The Bible does nowhere in church history do we have this idea that we were created in the image of angels or that angels were involved in our creation. God created us, not angelic beings. They were not involved in creating us. God did. And to try to bring angels into this, to me, is basically blasphemous because you're placing the angels in part of the creative act, that they are involved in creating and were created in their image along with God. That cannot be any way, shape, or form biblical. Let me read from a commentary. The creation of the first man is seen as a very special occasion, for there's a consultation prior to the event. Let us make man in our image sounds like the conclusion of a divine deliberation among the persons of the Godhead. God couldn't have been talking with angels about his plans because angels weren't made in God's image. And angels had nothing to do with the creation of Adam. All right, we know God himself is the one who takes Adam and forms Adam, right? It's God who does that. We read about that in Genesis chapter 2, right? God is the one doing it, not angels. So this clearly begins to scream for the Trinitarian concept of God, one God, three distinct persons. They are co-equal. They are co-eternal. It means all three were present. All three persons were present right here at creation, all right? And then you can go to Colossians 1, John chapter 1, I think even a part of Hebrews, and you get this idea Jesus is involved in creation. We have the Holy Spirit here, possibly being spoken of in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and then we have God himself. So you've God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Seems to be pretty straightforward. I know it's controversial for those who deny the doctrine of the Trinity, but your only option there, that's not God, if that plurality is not speaking of God, then you're bringing angels into the creative act that they're creating, and we are created in the image of angels. No, we're created in the image of God. We are created in the image of God. So that's very important. So there's the plurality mentioned there in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Now let's stop right here. So we have the plurality. Speaking of the Godhead, I think everyone has to acknowledge that. I don't know how you get around that, okay? Or you either end up with multiple gods, which is a denial of the Bible claiming there's one God, or you end up with trying to bring angels into this, and now you have angels involved in the creative act, which almost makes them God. So you ultimately end up within God and smaller g gods who created us. And no, none of that works. Or you're left with the idea of the Trinity. And the Trinity helps explain this. So just keep that in mind. Now, there's the plurality issue. Let us make man in our image. All right. Now, here's another thing that I want you to consider. This is worth $1 million right here. What does it mean that we are created in the image of God? What does that exactly mean? I'm created in the image of God. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to give you some ideas. You can read countless books on this. You can even look this up in the Bible dictionary. Some Bible dictionaries even have an entire entry on what it means that we're creating the image of God. And there's lots of speculation and lots of dispute. We can just go ahead and throw this out. Where clearly it's not referring to our physical image, right? Because God is a spirit. So to be created in his image has nothing to do with our physicality, has nothing to do with the way we look physically. That's not what that is referencing. God is a spirit and must be worshiped in spirit and truth. John chapter 4, I believe that's verse 24. You can verify that. All right. So it's not a physical thing. It's not a physical thing. Keep that in mind. It's not a physical thing. I think it was a governor. I don't remember. I've got the news article somewhere. He refused to wear a mask during the COVID-19 pandemic. Why? Because we're creating the image of God, so we can't cover up our face because our face is where we see the image of God. What are you talking about? It has nothing to do with physicality. God is a spirit. Bad theology, bad public policy, cray-cray. Okay, that's not what we want. All right. So it has to deal with something else. So let's come up with a couple of ideas that I think are essential to this question. And there's a lot of different ways to name the first thing I think it means, but I'm going to rely on The Foundations of the Christian Faith by James Montgomery Boyce and go with the way he explains the first thing that this means. All right, here we go. Let's look more closely at what it means to be created in the image of God. One thing it means is that women and men possess those attributes of personality that God himself possesses, but that animals, plants, and matter do not. To have personality, one must possess knowledge, feelings, and a will. All right. Now, I'm going to throw in a lot of things there. He called it personality. I just want to make sure we get this idea that when we say personality, we're dealing with a lot of issues there. And the reason I wanted to go with that one, because I could kind of put a lot of ideas together instead of trying to have them all space out. So it'll be easier for you to remember. So that you are created in the image of God. I'm created in the image of God. There's something here that means personality. So what does that mean? That means, I think, we are rational creatures. Like we can think, we can question. We have this ability to reason. We have ability to ask, where did I come from? Right? That's all a part of this personality. God obviously he's aware, he's self-aware. He has a mind. He questions us. He asks questions. He obviously thinks. He's described as having wisdom. Because we are creating the image of God, we have this personality where we have, a mind that thinks, feelings that feel, right? And that we are aware. So we have a mind and we have feelings and we are aware. We are aware of ourselves. We have self-consciousness. We understand that we exist. We understand what it means. We question our existence. We question our origin. We question our eternal destiny. We question what happens after death. We question death. That separates us from the animals in a completely different way. There's a level of awareness and a rational mind and thinking and feelings. We question why we feel a certain way. We get depressed. There's all of these things happening that shows some form of personhood, personality, and God possesses that. He gets angry. He loves, right? He's aware. He questions, and that we possess that same thing. So our personality is proof that we are created in the image of God. Now, please note, something's going to happen. Remember, everything is good at this point. That's why I made that key word. The personality at the time would have been good, but something horrible is going to happen to the personality. They talk about the will. They had a will. Clearly, Adam and Eve had a will, right? Hey, don't do this. They did the opposite. They had a will, right? They had a will. Now, we know that our will is something bad's going to happen to that will. Their will was in a good state. Well, what happens after the fallen state? So it's a will. It's thinking, it's a personality, it's feelings. All of that is because we are created in the image of God, right? So we have to understand that. That's very important, okay? Second, so there's personality. Second, the second thing it means to be created in the image of God is morality. Morality. Now, this is so important. This is so important, all right? I cannot stress this enough. Every person, no, it doesn't matter who they are. They can be an atheist. They can be an agnostic. They can hate Christianity. This idea of morality, they can't run from. They can't, because no matter how much they say, look, you'll be arguing with someone who will say, I hate Christianity. I don't want nothing to do with Christianity. I despise Christianity. I hate you, all your rules, trying to tell everyone how to live, and you think you're right, and you condemn everyone. And you're so judgmental and closed-minded and bigoted, blah, blah, blah. And they just go off because we have these moral standards that they can't imagine. And then they walk away from that arguing with a Christian, and 5 seconds later, they're like, I can't believe that person did that. That is so wrong. That is so messed up. I hate racism. I hate bigotry. I hate that. Whoa. It sounds like you've got a morality. Now, what's the basis of your morality? They don't have a basis. Our basis of our morality is because we're created in the image of God. So guess what? If we're creating the image of God, and that's why we're moral beings, then the source of morality comes from, drum roll please, God. But I want you to just realize morality shows up in everyone. It doesn't matter where you go. You can go to the deepest parts of some unexplored territory and find a tribe that's been cut off from civilization since their origin, since their beginning. And guess what? They're going to have some resemblance of morality. It may be twisted. It may be messed up, but they're going to believe this is right and this is wrong. Punish for this. Praise for this, reward for this, punishment for that, because we are moral beings created in the image of God, who is a moral being. And what do we discover? Well, he's already demonstrated morality because he's already judged things as being very good, and ultimately he'll say they've been very good. He's going to tell them what's right and what's wrong. You can eat of all these trees. You cannot eat of that. That's a moral standard. Oh, you do this, this is going to happen. And then he punishes them for breaking the rule. That's all a system of morality. And we see it in the very early part of Genesis, and you see it in yourself. Again, everyone has a sense of morality. The issue is, do they acknowledge the source of that feeling, or do they just say that it's their own feeling and that their moral standard is somehow right and binding on other people? No, if you're going to say something is right and something is wrong, what standard are you basing it on? Remember, there's only a couple of sources from which morality can come from. There's only a couple of places which morality can come from. I've gone through this 100 times, so I'm going to go through it quick. Morality can come from the majority. The majority of people determine morality. So if the majority of people want to say gay marriage is wrong, homosexuals should be locked up, imprisoned, and killed, well, guess what? That would be moral to do. Now, you say that to some lost people, they'll look at you like you're crazy. Well, does the majority determine morality or not? Well, there was a time the majority of people believed it was okay to enslave human beings as property. Buy and sell human beings. Was that right? You say, no, that was horrible. That was wrong. So the majority is not always right. Majority cannot be the source of morality, because there's been plenty of times in history where the minority challenged and ultimately overcame the majority with a minority view of what was right and what was wrong. So clearly the majority is not always right. How about the minority? Well, you say the minority determines morality. Well, then wait a minute. What if you have some, small group over there who believes that having physical relations with a child is okay? Is that, no, you're like, no, society would, so now you're back to the majority. So does the minority determine it, or does the majority determine morality? Well, sometimes people like the majority when they're in the majority. Sometimes they like the minority when they're in the minority wanting to overcome the majority. So where is the source of morality? Within the majority or within the minority? You can see situations in history where the majority were later deemed to be immoral and wrong, and the minority was deemed to be moral. And there's times in history where the minority is deemed by the majority to be immoral. Who determines morality? Third source, you got the majority, you got the minority, or you've got the individual. The individual determines what's moral. So you'll hear this. Well, look, it's my morality. It's what I believe to be right and wrong. Well, if your morality believes that's right and wrong, and my morality believes your morality is wrong, then it's every man does what is right in their own eyes, and you cannot have a society where everyone determines what's right and what's wrong, because you'll have moral chaos and anarchy. And typically the people say, well, that's just my morality. Still turn around and judge everyone else for not following their morality. Okay. Hey, that's just my way of thinking. But you're wrong if you don't think my way and you don't go along with my sense of morality. I believe that a child at the age of 3, if the parent wants to, to change the biological sex of that child through some kind of surgical procedure, if the parent wants to do it, they can do it. It's their child. It's their sense of right and wrong. Whoa, wait a minute. So you believe they can do that? Yeah, I believe so. So the parent can do anything they want? Well, no, they can't do anything they want. So what can the parent do? Because it's their sense of morality. If they believe it's a sense of morality to beat a child, is that right or wrong? Well, now they're hurting someone else. And you get into this weird, they can never determine what's right and what's wrong. They'll say that they have their own sense of morality, but then condemn someone else's sense of morality. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought you said that was your view. Right? If Christians will say, wives, submit yourselves to your husband as unto the Lord. And those who are lost will be like, that is immoral. That is wrong. You're like, wait, I thought you said it was only your view of morality. But now you're telling me my view of morality is wrong. Which is it? So even people who claim individual source of morality never abide by that because they want to force their view of morality on someone else. So it's either the majority, it's either the minority. If it's the individual, then there is no standard of morality. Everyone just determines what's right and they do what's right in their own eyes, which leads to moral chaos. Or the last option is a transcendent source of morality, which is God. Now, that's the biblical view. God is the source of morality. We are created in his image. That's why we all have this internal sense of that's wrong, that's right. That's not fair. You don't have to teach a kid that. They quickly will say, that's not right. That's not fair. Because there's some internal sense. They're created in the image of God. So personality, which makes up the mind, the will, and the feelings, that reflects God. That reflects God. Keep that in mind. Morality, the sense of morality. And then thirdly, spirituality. So personality, morality, and spirituality. What do I mean about spirituality? God is a spirit. We are created in the image, and we have a spiritual aspect to ourselves. There's a spiritual aspect to us. That's why no matter where you go, no matter what society you find, they have some God. They have some kind of spiritual being because we are created in the image of God. There's a spiritual part in us that will live forever in either heaven or hell. And that spiritual part, even though it's all messed up by the fall, we still are aware that there's got to be more. There's just a natural understanding that something had to make us. There's something more. There's something spiritual. And that spirituality takes all kinds of abhorrent shapes. You may have someone worshiping a tree, worshiping an idol. They may be throwing their baby in a river. They may be doing horrible things. That's a result of the fall. But that spirituality that you cannot wipe out, no matter what you do, you can ban it, you can punish it, you can ridicule it, you can have some people abandon it. But the majority of people will always have some kind of sense of spirituality because we are created in the image of God. We are created in the image of God. Now listen. We're created in the image of God. Personality, morality, and spirituality. The only way the personality can be right, the only way the morality can be right, and the only way the spirituality can be right is when it looks to God for personality, for morality, and for spirituality. If we abandon God, our personality gets out of whack. Right now, it's already out of whack because of the fall, but you can't get it back into the right way of thinking. Our personality, our thinking, our feelings, our will, all has to be shaped by God. God has to be, he's the model. We are created in his image. If you want to know what the personality should look like, you have to go back to God. If you want to know what your morality should look like, you have to go back to God. If you want to know what your spirituality should look like, you have to go back to God. That's how come people who abandon God, their morality gets all whacked out of shape. Their spirituality turns into who knows what, and their personality has issues. Now, listen, Christians, our personalities have issues as well. Our morality has issues as well, and our spirituality has issues as well because we're sinners. That's where the fall is going to mess all of this up. But remember, we have to go back to God for what is personality to look like? We go back to God. God can be angry, but he doesn't sin. So there's a righteous kind of anger. He loves. There's a right way. He defines what love is. All these different aspects. I think you get the idea. All right. We have to go back to God. We are created in the image of God. That means personality. That includes the mind, a rational thought, self-awareness. It deals with feelings and emotions, and it deals with the will. All right. We are created in the image of God. Morality. The sense of right and wrong is because we're creating the image of God. Spirituality, this idea of believing in something outside of ourselves, some kind of higher power of some sort, that comes because we are creating the image of God. Right? I cannot stress that enough. All right, we're at 45 minutes. Let's continue. All right. So he says, oh man, where else? I want to look at, where else do I want to go here? Oh, let me look here. Give me 1 second. I'm looking at chapter 2. I don't know if I want to jump there. I don't want to jump there yet. Yeah. Okay, yeah. We'll get to chapter 2 and deal with some other issues in chapter 2. Sorry for that silence there. If we were in a classroom, you would see me standing there looking at my Bible, and it wouldn't be as awkward. It may be awkward, but it's always more awkward when you're doing it in an audio format. So I apologize for that. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. So we got the plurality. We've got what it means to be created in the image of God. Oh, yeah, we definitely need to talk about this. Go to verse 27. Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. All right, both male and females were created in the image of God. Right, it's for both, but I want to make sure we understand this. He created male and female. He created male and female. Those are the two biological sexes that he created, male and female. You are either a male or you are a female. Now, I understand because we live in a fallen world. You can have all kinds of things that can happen. All kinds of things that can happen, that things can get messed up. We have to allow for things to get out of whack because of creation. So you can have someone born and there's things going on because of different things that happen, because of some things that have occurred that can create some problems. I understand that, okay? But make sure we get this. The way it was designed was God created male and he created female. Now, I want to make sure you remember this. Remember the three aspects? Please hear me. The three, we are created in the image of God. That deals with personality, that deals with morality, that deals with spirituality. Now listen to what I'm about to say. All three of those become broken and messed up, and we do not reflect the image of God like we're supposed to because of the fall. So our personality gets messed up, our morality gets messed up, and our spirituality gets messed up. Everyone acknowledges that. Everyone has to acknowledge that. But the very next verse says he created him, he, them, male and female. He created them in his image, male and female. Well, guess what? If everything else gets messed up because of the fall, guess what else can happen because of the fall? The understanding of sex, the understanding of sexuality, the understanding of gender, all of that gets messed up as a result of the fall as well. It's all the result of the fall that now we have all of these weird ideas. Well, you can be a male, but you may not feel like a male. You may have been born in a male's body and you look like a male and you have the genetics of a male and you have the biology of a male, but you don't feel like a male. So what we're going to do is we are going to encourage you and celebrate you possibly dressing as a woman, acting as a woman, and then possibly completely having your body surgically altered to try to look like a woman and be a woman. Well, guess what? That's all the result of the fall. That's all the result of the fall. And no matter how much you try to change it, that person was still created as a male, and it can't change that genetically. At the very genetic level, he's a male. He can act like a female, but that's a destruction of the way things were created. But please remember, the reason some people may truly feel that way, right, is because of the fall. These are all every deviation from the original creation, whether in our personality, whether in our morality, or whether in our spirituality, all of that deviation is a result of the fall. So this is very important. When we don't understand them, the way is not to argue with them politically. The way is not even to argue with them countless other ways. You can try to bring science into it. And listen, they won't listen. It's a spiritual problem. The whole transgender thing is a result of the fall. The whole sexual thing is a result of the fall. The whole lust, adultery, pornography is a result of the fall. We took what was created that was good. The fall messed everything up. And now we see the deviations from the original plan because of the fall. They need spiritual help. They need salvation. They're not there to be mocked. They're not there to be made fun of. They're not there to be called names. They're not there to have political and ideological arguments with. That's sometimes what we'll do is we'll get on YouTube and we'll see maybe David Crowder or, Steven Crowder. Okay. You know his program. Okay. I think it's Steven Crowder. There's the singer and then there's the conservative YouTube star. Okay. So I don't know which one. Crowder. Okay. Louder with Crowder is the name of the program. You'll see him maybe arguing with transgender students, or Ben Shapiro arguing with transgender students, or some other conservative. And then Christians will be like, yeah, you show them, you tell them. That's not going to help the transgender student. Okay, I understand what you're trying to argue is for reality and for science. I understand that, but remember, it's a spiritual problem. We're created in his image. That image is all messed up. Why? Because of the fall. We all say amen to that. Our personality is not always right. Why? Because of the fall. Our thinking is not always right. Why? Because of the fall. Our emotions are not always right. Why? Because of the fall. Okay, we can go all through. Our will is messed up. Why? Because of the fall. All right, our morality is messed up. Why? Because of the fall. Our spirituality is messed up because of the fall. But when it says he created them male and female, and you look at the world and go, how could they ever get confused by that? Because of the fall. If we can get confused in our personality and our morality and spirituality, then you had to think sexuality was going to come into play. He creates them male and female. There's sexuality being created, right? And listen, it's going to be very important to see this. He created them male and female, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. These sexuality comes into play right there. Well, guess what? If the personality, morality, and spirituality gets messed up because of the fall, guess what's going to happen to the sexuality? It's going to get messed up because of the fall. All deviations in sexuality, whether it's transgenderism, homosexuality, pedophiles, all of it is a result of the fall. We deviated because of the fall. Everything has deviated from its original creation. It went from good to death, destruction, evil, and bad. I just want you to see that the sexuality issues in our culture cannot be won by conservative arguments, scientific arguments. It's not going to work. They need salvation. They need faith. This is a spiritual war, and it can only be overcome spiritually. You need to pray for them, show love to them, demonstrate grace and mercy, and tell them of Christ died for them, and that their personality can only hope to be corrected in Christ. That's the only way to fix it. And you have to see this, because sometimes it's mind-boggling. You're like, wait a minute. You do understand Like scientifically, you understand that, John over here, I got to take a drink of water. You do understand that John over here was born a male, right? He wasn't one of those situations where something didn't go right. He was biologically a male. So you understand he was biologically a male, genetically a male. He was a male. And so if you were to study his genetic makeup, it's going to show that he's a male, right? You got that? Okay. That's scientific fact, right? But people will say that doesn't matter because he doesn't feel comfortable in the male's body. So he should be celebrated and supported to want to I'll say mutilate the body, but we'll just say surgically modify the body and dress and act like a woman. And then we should all address him by a female pronoun. And now John wants to be known as Susan. And so we refer to him as Susan and we refer to him as a her because that's what now she wants. And you can sit there and go, no, you understand. Let's do a test of his genetic makeup. It's going to show that he's a male. Doesn't matter what's been done to the body. He is a male. Right? Yes? No? And no matter what, and sometimes it blows your mind that no matter how many arguments you make, they're like, no, you're wrong. You're closed-minded. You're confused. You don't understand that gender is different than sex. And they'll talk about we're clueless and we don't get it. And we're not advanced in our academic understanding. Guess what? You know why that argument won't work? You guess why all that argument will not work? It's a spiritual issue. It's a spiritual issue. You deviate from God. He's the origin of it. Remember, divine origin, supernatural origin. If you're going to throw out God, then guess what? You begin to redefine what normal is. You begin to redefine what purpose is. You begin to redefine what happiness is. You begin to redefine what love is. You begin to redefine what right and wrong is because we throw out God. Once you throw out God, it's a free-for-all. So I want you to get that. We are creating the image of God. Listen, that deals with morality, that deals with personality, and it deals with spirituality. But God also sets up sexuality right in the very next verse. He created male and female in his image, and he blesses them and tells them to multiply, right? That's sexuality. He creates gender and sexuality right there. Male and female. Now, you can go yell at people and say, God, and you can hold up signs in front of, the Supreme Court when they're hearing some case about transgenders, and you can say, he created them male and female, and you can yell and yell and yell and yell. It's not going to, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you quote the scripture to them. Those individuals need prayer. They need to see salt and light, and they need someone to love them and show them the gospel of Christ. They need the gospel. They don't need an argument about sexuality. They don't need an argument. They need to know, they do need to understand that they're sinners, and you don't even have to point out the whole transgender or their homosexuality as being the sin. You can point out countless other sins that they commit that you commit. Pick sins that you commit and say, do you commit these sins? Don't even get to the sexual issue, and they'll say, yes. Well, guess what? I do too. I'm a sinner, you're a sinner. Guess what that means? We stand under the condemnation of God, but there's hope. There's salvation in Jesus Christ if you'll repent and turn to him. Now, when salvation occurs, then yes, then you've got to teach them to obey in all of these areas. But I'm saying once salvation occurs, we believe that something supernatural occurs, right? God has to fix their understanding of spirituality. God has to do that through the teaching of his word. But it's not just argue with them over that. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get it. You can argue all day about homosexuality. Why argue about it? They need salvation. They don't need a biblical, listen, guess what a homosexual needs? He doesn't need a biblical understanding of sexuality. He needs salvation. Guess what the transgender needs? He or she doesn't need a biblical understanding of sexuality. They need salvation. They need salvation. They need to be brought from their spiritual death to spiritual life. Then we teach them to obey what God has commanded. Then we say, no, this is the biblical understanding of sexuality. He created them male and female. But the reason that's messed up is because of the fall. Just because of our personality, morality, and spirituality. All right? I'll stop there. There's so much more I would like to say. So much more I would like to say. but I'll stop right there. Okay. All right. There's a lot. I wanted to get into Genesis 2, but we'll stop right there. All right. If you have any questions, you have any comments, email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I'm not even going to give you an assignment right now. I'm not going to give you an assignment. But, well, yeah, no assignment right now. We'll have plenty as we move through the book. When I feel that there's something that you definitely need. Now, if there's something you don't understand, something you're confused about, or something you have questions about, let me know. We may turn that into an assignment, okay? All right, newsif@yahoo.com. Thank you for listening to this session of the VBC Bible Institute. Please, 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 please. You say, what can I do to support you? Share the podcast with anyone and everyone who would like a Bible education. And then please write a good review for Apple Podcasts and just wherever you can rate the podcast. Please, please, please rate it, write a review. That's where we can get recognized. And because we want to get Bible education into the hands of as many people as possible, free of charge. All right, we'll stop there. Everyone have a great day, great weekend. God bless.